On this episode of WTF, we're going to show you how to make the best bakeable plant-based cheesecake. Hey, it's Chef Scott
and Janie, and welcome to WTF, where we help you transform food in your kitchen. So remember to subscribe and also stick around for our weekly giveaway. This week we are doing one of our top 5 most requested recipes, which is how do you make an amazing plant-based cheesecake. And I know we've been trying to do this one for a while. There's been a lot of requests. It's really taken quite a while for us to get to a point where we had a recipe that we're happy with to release. So I think let's start with, Scott, when you're doing your R&D, what were the challenges that you were really coming across?
Just about everything. Everything with this is so different than, traditional cheesecake. It doesn't have the cream cheese. It doesn't have the eggs. So you really need to find things that stand in the place of all those ingredients, but also you need that right texture, that right flavor. And then it needs to be able to be baked and done in the same method, at least for me, because I want to have that same feeling of making a cheesecake. So we found some really great things that we think makes an amazing cheesecake.
Yeah, I think that cheesecake texture was so hard to replicate. We had, test after test, like this one's too dense, that one's too soft, etc. It's the Goldilocks of recipes. But let's jump right into the demo, because I know there's a lot to show about how exactly you got there.
Yeah, so really it's talking through this demo and explaining why certain things are there that are going to help. So we start with oat milk, and this is just a flavorless oat milk. You can use our recipe. You can use any oat milk that you find in a store. Just make sure it's flavorless. If it's vanilla or something like that, that's fine. But sometimes they also have gums. So I just want to make sure that there's no interactions between any of the gums in the oat milk and the ingredients that we're using. So try to get it as basic and plain as possible.
Yep. We always recommend our oat milk because it has nothing in it.
Yeah, it has nothing in it that's going to affect it. The next is extra firm tofu. Now, people may say, oh, but wouldn't silken give it a silkier texture?
Yeah.
That's not, well, we thought the same thing. But it's really the extra firm has a lot of the water expelled from it, whereas the silken maintains a lot of that water, and then when you cook it, it breaks almost like eggs. So you get water pockets and you get that protein, and it just does not look nice, and it definitely doesn't have the right texture. So that extra firm tofu is going to get blended, and it's going to give us a really great bakeable texture. If for some reason you wanted to omit this, it's not going to be the exact same. This is a really important part of this recipe. We have our dry ingredients, which I'll get to in a second, but the first really important one is a new flavor drop that we have, which is actually cheesecake flavoring. Now, we obviously don't have any cream, we don't have any milk, we don't have any eggs, so all of those things that really lend to a great cheesecake flavor are omitted in this. If you didn't have this ingredient, the texture would be great, but it's really you want that cheesecake, like a very distinct cheesecake flavor, and that is the best way to get it that we have found.
Yeah, and we actually went out looking for this because we're like, how do we get that flavor? And this was really the nicest one that we found that we're like, oh, this tastes like cheesecake.
And it's great. It's not, it's very natural flavor. So it's great. Then just cashews that are just, I just crunch them up a little bit. You definitely want to use some sort of nut in here because to give you that almost like slightly granular texture that comes with making a cheesecake. Yes, it needs to be creamy, but there's always that slight bit of granularness to it. So I'm going to blend this up in just a second, but let's put our dry ingredients together. So flour. This was one that sometimes when you're making recipes, especially plant-based, you try to omit certain things, but the flour is one that we absolutely needed. The flour really helps with that texture. It helps with the color on the outside of the bake. All of that is very important for this. Then we went with some sugar.
It's humid here in the test kitchen.
They're just on top. There we go. So put that in there. Those will break up. Yeah, nice and easy. Great. The last three that we're going to put in here are the salt. Same thing with this. Just a little bit of salt is going to bring out that flavor. And then 2 ingredients, carrageenan iota. So that's going to help give us like a very creamy texture. And then Druids Grove vegan gelatin. And the reason why we use both of these is this gives us an almost egg-like texture.
Okay.
But when we add the iota to it, it's going to help give us that kind of cream cheese texture for like the baked cake. So it'll be solid, and then when you eat it, it'll break down. It's very nice. So mix these just dry ingredients in here because we're going to fold in our wet into our dry.
Yeah, and often some of the feedback we hear from people is they're saying, well, I don't have both of these, can I just use one? I only have Kappa because I've been making vegan cheese with it, can I just use that? I think for this recipe, it sounds like the answer is no, because I know we've been playing around with this for a while.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest sticking with this recipe as it is because there's so many components to it, and they each do something so slightly different that to get the exact result, yes, do this. If you absolutely want to admit it, you can, but just know that it's not going to end up the same. The last dry that we're not adding just yet is the lactic acid. That gives us almost that fermented cheese like
tang.
acidity.
Yeah,
that tang. So it's not going to be fermenty. It's just going to have that kind of acidity, which is common. So let's blend this up, and we'll make a little emulsion here. So I'm just going to blend this on medium, and then I'm going to pour in our we used Earth Balance, and that's what we liked. That's what we found had a great flavor for this. But this is just plant-based butter. This is going to help give us that buttery flavor as well. So everything in here has a reason for being in here. So I'm going to blend this up. I'm going to make sure that this tofu is broken down and smooth, and also the nuts are broken down and smooth before I start putting in my butter. All right, so that's all blended and emulsified in. And now I can just mix it right in with my dry ingredients, and then I'll fold until it's combined.
It almost at this point looks like a pancake batter.
Yes, and it'll get a little bit thicker as we go through the recipe here, but that's exactly what we want because we want it to have that nice, almost dense texture as we get to the bake.
And what I can see here is that even though this is thoroughly emulsified, you still see the little, I think we call it the granularity that's in there. That's so unique to a cheesecake that we're definitely having that in there. It's not too much.
It's just enough so it's not too smooth, right? No cheesecake is overly smooth. There will always be a slight texture to it.
Okay. And when I noticed when you were pouring in, it was like a very smooth, very slow drizzle of the butter. That just to help with the emulsion? Yeah,
you never want to, especially if you're emulsifying things without a stabilizer, you want to give that fat time to mix in really well into the whatever it is that you're making. So I'm going to mix this. There is that sugar that needs to be dissolved, so it takes a little bit of mixing. That's great. And then I pour it right over. So we did, you can get vegan graham crackers, or if you don't want to use graham crackers, you can use some like Biscoff cookies and just crush them up. And it's a small amount of the same vegan butter, just mixed in with that, and then pressed into the bottom of a springform pan. So put this right over.
All right. And what's the time and temp for baking?
So in a conventional oven, it's around 275 for 45 minutes, right? So get all this in there.
Remember, you can get the whole recipe in the links in the description below, so don't worry about writing it down. And also later on this channel, you're going to see a short or reel, whatever it's called these days, and that's going to really get you through the whole process from start to finish if you like to see that as well.
Yep. So get it in there, set it so it's nice and even. I do like to give this about, also don't forget to mix in your lactic acid. Mix in your lactic acid after you get the whole thing mixed together before you put it in here.
You can, we'll just dust it on. This one has the lactic acid in it.
Yes, it does. So then I like to give this about 10 to 20 minutes just to let the top even out so it's nice
Okay.
and smooth. Because especially if you're mixing it around or moving it with the spatula, you're going to make little lines. So I just give it a little bit of time just to even out there. So we can move into. Not make a mess. Move this over, and we can bring that plate in, Janie. If
Cool.
you want to lift up that slice, so I've already sliced a little bit.
This is a beautiful looking cheesecake. Look how nice this looks right now. It's got the perfect texture. You can see that unique combination of creaminess and like texture and granularity. I cannot wait to dig into it.
And the top isn't, overly brown. There's no crack, which is something that you find with dairy-based cheesecake. And then just some obviously macerated berries over the top.
That looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
But before we dive into it, we have to talk about this week's giveaway, which will be, you might have guessed it, the ingredients that you need in order to make this recipe. So you got the vegan gelatin, the iota, the cheesecake flavoring, which is new to Modernist Pantry. We're so excited about it. And in order to enter to win these ingredients, leave in the comments below another dessert that you would like to see us tackle here in the test kitchen. All right, now we can dive into it. I'm excited. All right. I'm gonna push the berry aside just because I want to get that full cheesecake experience with a little bit of this strawberry juice. And that is amazing.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite plant-based recipes. It took a lot of work,
good.
but to get something that looks and tastes and really feels like a cheesecake is, I'll just pat myself on the back. It's a bit of an achievement, and I hope people enjoy it and try it and give us their feedback, because if there's ways to make it better, we want to know, because I really love this recipe.
It's really good. So it's smooth, it's creamy, it's got that that little hint of acidity from the lactic acid that's in this cheesecake. It's got the right cheesecake flavoring, and I really love it. So, because I'm lactose intolerant, I haven't had cheesecake in a very long time, but that used to be one of my favorite foods, and it's really exciting to kind of have that back. And it's so close to to the dairy version. We hope that you're excited to give this a shot too, and let us know what you think. So until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie.
And I'm Chef Scott.